The way rock art works is that rocks to many indigenous peoples are alive. It's a mystical element, and they believe that animals, in fact, were immortals. So understanding those particular factors are key in terms of better translating rock art. Archaeologists and anthropologists are often asked if rock art is necessarily a language, or if the symbology can be translated as particular words, sounds, or letters. And that's a very controversial subject, but for the most part, native peoples throughout certainly North America and most of the other world do not have written languages. And so it's difficult to translate these directly as almost phonemes or words or morphemes. So it's really best to understand them in the ritual context, symbolic context of the way that they were manufactured. So meanings have to be derived based on the context of the people. Rock art is found as either a pictograph or a petroglyph. And the difference between the two is pictographs are rock paintings and petroglyphs are rock drawings. So one is pecked on stone and the other is painted on stone. So when we think of the word pictographs, we're talking about paintings, and when you think of the word petroglyphs, we're talking about rock drawings. And the way they're manufactured is that rock drawings often peck through the veneer, the surface of the rock, revealing the heart rock. And paintings are painted on the rock using pigment. Okay, we're here at the famous site of the Tabatalabo pictographs. The site in the Tabatalabo language was called Palakuch, which is a fishing site. And the paintings here, this is the largest and most complex of any Tabatalabo painting site in all of their territory. And these often were done by medicine men, and they may have been seeking visions. And they commemorate the visions by painting the pictures that they saw in their dreams. At Palakuch, what we're seeing here is the representation of a Tabatalabo painting. Tabatalabo were the Indians of the South Fork of the Kern River. It was an Indian fishing site and one that had archaeoastronomical significance as well. And probably the individuals that painted some of these representations were ritualists. We know that that particular site is about 1,000 years old because we've been able to get an AMS radiocarbon date on that pigment. We're here at another panel of slippery rocks, and as you can see from the holes in the granite boulders, the bedrock, these are slickened and fluted surfaces that have been scoured by the fast-moving waters of the Kern River. Listen to it. Doesn't it echo almost? There are some rocks that are petroglyphic stones, ones that are rock drawings, that are called lithophones. And they are ringing rocks. When you pound them with another stone, they ring. They make an actual ringing noise. And I was curious to see if this one would be such a stone. You can see how the rock flakes away through time, removing the desert varnish and exposing the heart rock. Now the heart rock in part actually picks up that desert varnish and begins to age and pick up that patina. And as it does, it begins to mellow, change color. The actual fresh color is the white, very bright, unvarnished heart rock. And this darkened, blackened is the desert varnished part of the rock. And here you can see how darkened it all is. It's black against the white, and that is rich with iron and manganese. What we have here is one of those rare examples of a petroglyph, a rock drawing or rock pecked site that exists right next to the Kern River. And these are Atlatl symbols, spear throwers. Atlatl, in fact, is a Uto-Aztecan word which comes from the Mesoamerican languages. But these depictions are done as a circle bisected by a line and sometimes with a hook at their end. The hook is an engaging hook, and the Atlatl is a spear thrower that would lengthen a person's arm and allow the spear to be connected and would assist in the thrust and the power and the ability to hunt. And we know from archaeological studies that Atlatl's spears actually were replaced by bows and arrows about 2,000 years ago, about 2 millennia. So what we're looking at here is a boulder, a petroglyph, that in fact is minimally 2,000 years and possibly 3, 4, or even 5,000 years in age. One of the major theories of rock art and animal depictions has to do with hunting magic. And although the theory has recently gone out of favor and has been replaced by an alternate hypothesis related to the importance of vision quests and shamanism, there really is room in our understanding to interpret animal depictions with a bit of both perspectives simultaneously. That made the rock art were ritualists, but they also were commoners, and they were indigenous people. These symbols that were used are significant symbols, religious symbols, ceremonial symbols in the main. These were not graffiti or something done cavalierly. They were done religiously, significantly, as part of their ideology. They had meaning, they had significance, and they had power. They were part and parcel of the lives of the native peoples. So when others might think of writing their names or sketching something rather cavalierly on the rocks, those would be seen as defacement or not really a reverent approach to the way in which native peoples, indigenous peoples, truly respect the land. Oh my word, it's a bighorn sheep. Oh, I've never seen this one before, ever, ever. Awesome, 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 awesome. It's a more ancient sheep, but it's definitely a sheep. It's in a flute. Awesome. Oh, that's so great. It's got the back-swept horns. It's very primitive. Chances are it's part of the earlier pattern before the fluorescence of the bighorn Koso sheep. So I would say that probably dates to a couple thousand years ago. We're here at Fossil Falls. This is in eastern California. We're in Rose Valley. Behind me is the Red Hill Cinder Cone. To the back of me is the Koso Range, where we find the Koso Range petroglyphs. Here you'll see the fluted and fashioned boulders from the wave action, the tremendous movement of the Pleistocene Owens River 12,000 to 10,000 years ago as it ran through the boulders. And inside these boulders, inside the flutes on the edges, are some early geometric petroglyphs. Inside this tube, this lava tube that goes from the surface to this point, it's a scoured flute. There are ancient glyphs, and they are curvilinear meanders. There's meandering lines that go all around the base of this column. There's two lines that follow one another. Now, one hypothesis is that this relates to sort of the imagery that shamans, medicine men, may have seen in their visions. The cultural context, the meaning and function of rock art is one of the most difficult topics to definitively address. And of course, there's tremendous controversy regarding various theories and hypotheses relating to the function and meaning of rock art. Much of rock art is what they call polysemous or multivalent. There's many meanings and many levels of meanings in rock art. So there's no one correct answer to the function or meaning of rock art. But nonetheless, the most important frame of reference were that of the manufacturers of the rock art, the indigenous people. So the best way to best address function or meaning of rock art is to really understand the cultures that created them. We're up above Little Lake, walking along the basalt flows above the cove, and we're walking along the sand here in terms of the obsidian scatter that exists all in these areas. Here we see some of the basalt and the orange lichen that appears. It produces this desert varnish as it ages. The rock art here starts about 10,000 years ago and goes on up to about 1,000 years ago. The rock art that you see that is heavily repatinated and in fact so darkened that you can hardly make it out is the oldest. Over here you see some bighorn sheep, part of the Coso sheep cult. Over half the representations in the Coso range represent bighorn sheep. Half are abstract or other areas, but there's 100,000 images in the Coso range, and 50,000 of them are in fact, they represent sheep. These are the classic Coso style sheep. You'll see 3 of them ascending and 2 down below. When I say classic Coso style sheep, what I mean is flat back, boat shape or navicular body with a face, the actual head of the bighorn, having these full front facing bifurcating horns. And this type of image is only found in the Cosos. It's very characteristic of the Coso artisans. And it only existed during a very restricted time period from about AD 600 to about AD 1300. It's found frequently associated with bow and arrow men and hunting dogs. And this is one of the characteristic images that are part of the Coso representational rock art complex. Rock art is part of our cultural heritage. We critically need to protect it. These are treasures. They're irreplaceable treasures. They are hundreds or thousands of years old, and they have information that will help us scientifically to reconstruct the prehistoric lifeways and religious systems of the ancient people that we have identified. And plus, these images are remarkable. They tell us something about the ideology, the cognitive maps, the way in which ancient people viewed the world, viewed each other, and viewed the landscape. One of the best things we can do is leave the rock art that we see alone, try to preserve it, try to respect it, try to understand that this is a religious monument, a sacred site, and to Native peoples, these areas and imagery has power, It's as though we were visiting a church.